Good evening, madam. My name is Satya Silan. So today my group will be presenting about table etiquette of Chinese and Western. Table etiquette is defined as a standard rule set by a specific group of people to apply while eating, which can also include how people use utensils while eating. It refers to a pattern of manners practiced by different cultures all around the world. Each group organizes standards to apply these rules strictly. According to Zhu, one table etiquette of how they eat, what kind of food they consume, the time they eat, it's really a reflection of their culture. Weiser asserted that eating was originally merely a biological need, has been transformed into cultural needs in a way that it's being utilized as a catalyst for a social relationship. Based on Zhang, when a foreigner travels to another country, it is important to understand and consist of the basic knowledge about the local cultural customs, and table etiquette is one of the most important aspects. Table etiquette is not merely a means of social communication, but represent the symbolic local culture and cultural customs. Now I'm going to talk about history table etiquette of Chinese and Western. The ancient Greeks documented the earliest Western restaurant traditions. The manners of the European table and other chivalry examples go back to the old century. Men once showed respect when a woman, a senior or dignitary, came into the room or went to the dining table. It was a humble gesture. Standing demonstrates that someone is careful and attentive. It was also customary until a guest took a seat for a long time. An excerpt from the 1860s, the Gentleman's Book of Etiquette and Politeness Manual says, "Wait at the table, wait till every lady sits and then sits down." Chinese table etiquette began at least from the Zhou dynasty, as the Confucian philosopher's reign was the end of Zhou dynasty. The value of hierarchy that remains depicted in society nowadays has been shown by Confucius' table etiquette in the view of fact that he would stay at the table that they were dining at until the elders leave the table. Additionally, there was another book that provides proof that the beginning of Chinese table etiquette is from the etiquette and ceremonial book created by the Duke of Zhou, and the Duke lived during the dynasty of Zhou. Now I'm going to present about utensils. There is a very distinct difference in terms of utensils used during eating for both cultures. In Chinese culture, chopstick, bowl, plate, and spoon are used, while in Western culture, knives, forks, spoons, plate, and bowl are the utensils utilized. Based on based on Onzili, farming was regarded as a way of living for Chinese people, and with the climate, grain is usually the staple food. In contrast to Westerners, in which their forefathers lived their life by hunting animals, which resulted in meat becoming their staple food. Therefore, with these historical phenomena in mind, knives and forks are said to represent cruelty and violence to the food compared to chopstick.
Hi guys, so today I'll be presenting about the table settings between the Chinese culture and the Western culture. So in comparison, the Chinese cultures would have a lesser amount of utensils placed onto the table as compared to the Western culture, and that is because their meals do not come in intervals. With that being said, in the Chinese table setting, normally what you would have is that the main dish would just be placed onto the table, and that usually comes with the rice and soup, and that is basically your average Chinese dinner or lunch or meal setting. As compared to Western culture, you would have the starter, you would have the main course, and then you would eventually move on to dessert at the end. So in the Chinese table setting, you would just have a spoon, a bowl, a plate, a napkin, a chopstick, and a glass for drinks. And in the Western culture, you would have a bread knife, a bread plate, a dessert fork and spoon, a water glass, and a separate glass for wine. And they would have a soup spoon to go along with the salad knife, a dinner knife for usually what they have. They would usually have steaks. So the dinner knife is usually meant to cut meat. a dinner fork, and a salad fork for the salad.
I'm Jakshi, and I will be talking about the differences in table ethics and seating arrangement between Chinese and Western culture. In terms of table ethics, we found that in Chinese culture, they considerate of others, while in Western culture, they pay more attention to individual needs. The host in Chinese culture always consider the guests and other needs by choosing nice and special food for the guests, whereas the host in Western culture offer the guests their help or offer the guests permission to help themselves. Besides the way of both Chinese and Western culture, it shows a big difference. In Western culture, their way of is an indication of individualism's practice as everyone eats their own food separately on the long table due to the concern for their health and ensuring that the food will be eaten up. While in Chinese culture, a round table is being used as everyone would sit in a circle with the aim to share the abundant food, and this represents the Chinese culture is a collectivist culture. Seating arrangement also plays a role in table ethics in both cultures. In Chinese culture, people usually arrange the guest seats based on the order among seniors and juniors. Sitting facing north indicates the top authority position and power. Usually, the elderly in the family dinner and the noblest guests in formal dinner would be arranged the seats that facing the south. While in Western country, the gender of guests are considered first before arranging the seats. In a Western dinner party, the most honorable seats will belong to the hostess and the host will sit on the opposite side of the hostess. That's all for my part, and I'll pass it to Madiha.
I'm Madiha, and I'll be presenting about taboos and cultural implications. So taboos mean something that the culture does not do or not encouraged to do. So in Western culture, when drinking soup or eating, do not make any noises. It is not polite to stand for food. An individual should not round the neck with a napkin. Instead, it should be laid on the knee. And do not wave the knife in hand and fork as it is considered impolite. While in Chinese culture, do not put the chopstick upright in the rice bowl. This is because when somebody passes away, the shrine to them consists of bowl of rice or sand that is stuck with 2 sticks of incense upright in it. So it is rude to do so, and it is equivalent to wishing somebody dead. Secondly, do not place the teapot down where this pot is facing other people, as it is considered impolite. Thirdly, avoid tapping on the bowl with chopstick due to the fact that beggars tap on their bowls for food and donations. Hence, it is impolite and disrespectful. Fourthly, the elbow should stay close to the body and lay the napkins on the knee. Okay, moving on to implications of cultural dimensions. So based on Hofstede's cultural dimension, there is an individualism versus collectivism. So based on the cultures itself, it is evident that Chinese culture integrates the collectivism dimension even in their table etiquette, just as how Western integrate the individualism in their table etiquette. The orientation of collectivism that is being practiced by Chinese can be based on the proverb, if he wants to establish himself, he should help others to establish themselves firstly. Yang also added that since the Chinese cultures are mostly the influence of Buddhism, Confucianism, and Taoism, in which it promotes compassion, kindness, and harmony respectively, which as a result form of the nation of collectivism orientation. Whereas Western individualism rooted from Christianity, in which they believe in the omnipotence of God and in the sins Adam and Eve committed for eating forbidden fruit, and ever since has influenced Western psychology by promoting freedom, equality, democracy, and individualism. Stated by Darwish and Hubert, in a culture that promotes collectivism and individuals' relationship with the Stated by Darwish and Huber, in the culture that promotes collectivism and individuals' relationship with the in-groups such as family and friends are more likely to be stable and an individual remains in the group even if it requires a high cost. In addition, in the culture that promotes individualism, an individual is only directed at the goals that are valid in one of the in-groups among various in-groups. In collectivism culture, like Chinese culture, individuals are expected to value the goals of the group more than personal goals. Not only that, in Chinese culture, sharing is an important value. For example, people tend to eat together and share their dishes. However, in Western culture, they promote individualism. Unlike Chinese culture that shares their food, when Western people dine together, they prioritize themselves, they get their own food and eat separately.
So I'll be explaining Hofstede's cultural power distance. So in the Western culture, the power distance is relatively low compared to the Chinese, where such hierarchies in the Western culture simply do not exist and are not considered as a factor to have selective treatment. So if an individual is dining in a Western table, there is no selective treatment. Basically, you're practically equal to everyone, every single one that's sitting beside you and alongside with you at the table. So if it does not, your status does not matter. If you have a higher paying job than your relatives or your guests, there is not an appointed honorable seat for where you should be placed on the table. So everyone is seated equally. As to compare it with the Chinese, their culture values social hierarchy, and it's such a huge integration in almost every aspect of their lives until that culture is also brought onto the dining table. Which is why you would see that the Chinese are usually a lot more materialistic, and that is due to the culture because they have such value of social hierarchy and status. So in their dining table setting, they would have appointed seats for the most honorable member of the diner. So let's say that you are the CEO of the company amongst your relatives or your guests. You're probably the most high earned person in the setting, so you would definitely have a special seat dedicated to you as an indication of honor and respect. So you will have a designated seat. So in conclusion, Chinese food and Western food are one of food cultures. Like, culture is bound to communication and transmission, despite being the social histories, the different ethnic cultures, and different geographical features, different diet backgrounds have been existed between the Chinese and the West. However, the connotation of eating won't change because of these differences. It has become the consensus of the Chinese and Western food to emphasize a variety of food, balanced nutrition, rational matching, and health. So if we all have a good understanding of the differences of table manners between Chinese dining and Western dining, we will definitely avoid cultural conflicts when there is, and contradictions can be avoided to ensure the progress of exchanges smoothly. So understanding the differences of table manners between the Chinese and the West, as well as the reasons for these differences, is a good way to understand the local culture that permits expressing ideas accurately and properly across cross-cultural communication. Similarly, it can avoid the communication obstacles and misunderstandings caused by inappropriate ways or behaviors, and it can also further improve the success rate of economic and cultural exchanges and cooperation between these two different cultures to promote the betterment of and development of both sides. Thank you.